Why do you believe in the death penalty? Do you realize that it doesn't serve as a deterrent to crime? Do you know how many people, innocent people, have died for being wrongfully convicted? Is one innocent person enough for you to reconsider? The fact that death sentencing is disproportionately given to people of color isn't enough for you to say that we shouldn't have the death penalty? That by its arbitrary nature serves as cruel and unusual punishment under the 6th Amendment of our Constitution? A Constitution that was written by our framers to protect land-owning white men, not women or people of color. You have to understand something. The color of a defendant's and the victim's skin is inextricably connected to whether the defendant receives the death penalty in America. When you look at the statistics, it's easy to see how discrimination poisons the entire criminal justice system. These killings can be traced to the practice of lynching, where vigilantes killed black people without fear of judicial reprisals, like the album cover for the American Negro. This was done for the purpose of asserting social control over those of a darker hue. Now, since 1977, around 300 black defendants were executed for killing white victims. Around 20 white defendants were executed for killing black victims. Think about this and how the story of George Stinney Jr. exemplifies this. George and his older brother were arrested on suspicion of murdering 2 young white girls that were killed with a blunt object. He was only 14. And on the day of the murders, the girls asked George and his sisters where they could find maypop flowers. He pointed them in the direction where they could find the flowers, and the next day, they were found dead in the ditch. The bodies were discovered on the black side of Alcolu, South Carolina, in a segregated town. Now, George and his older brother were arrested, his older brother was released, and local newspapers announced there's a confession. The 14-year-old George Stinney Jr. claimed that the arresting officers starved him and then bribed him with food to confess to murders he didn't commit. He was denied a fair trial and convicted of murder with no physical evidence connecting him. And when he was on an electric chair, Bible served as his booster. His father was allowed to approach the chair to ask him his final words, but George had no final words. The executioner then put a strap from the chair over his mouth, and he broke into tears. The face mask was pulled over his head, but it was too big for his head. He died that day. And in 2014, a circuit judge vacated the conviction as he was convicted without due process of law. I tell this story to paint a picture, a better picture of the injustice people of color face when it comes to the death penalty. Listen to George Stinney Jr., a message from the American Negro.